Hello and hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to be back, and if this is your first time, I am Dalenga, and Dalenga is the founder of There Is Still Hope, a place where we encourage people to move away from past sorrows and move on and embrace a life that matters. If you are not a subscriber yet, you don't know what you're missing. Please do subscribe and become part of There Is Still Hope family. Well, I'm back, and I'm back with a new episode. Stay tuned. Well guys, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to this episode. It's all about financial wellness. We're going to touch on black tax. We will be touching on how to manage your money, the different tools of saving and what saving is. We will be talking so much about finances. Stay tuned and don't go away. Today we're talking about financial wellness, and as you can see, I am not alone. I have someone joining me to break down this topic. We're talking about money. We're talking about finances. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for accepting my invitation, Hendrina. Thank you for really availing yourself to come and educate us on money. Well, this is one topic that is really underrated. It's not even so much taught in school, and I must really say I'm excited to host you. Welcome to There Is Still Hope.
Thank you for having me. My name is Hendrina, like you said. Some people know me as Tulonga. I am an accountant turned educator.
Wow.
And I love to talk about money. I love to talk about money. My love for talking about money just started, I don't know, I started a blog. I was at school and bored. So I started writing about growth and money on this blog that I titled T on Growth and Money. T short for Tulonga. So I just talk about money from there, and then, yeah, it's a passion of mine to talk about money.
When I met you, you were talking about money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to host you. And I'm glad you said yes.
Welcome
to There Is Still Hope.
Thank you for having me on There Still Hope.
Well, Hendrina, someone might be out there thinking, well, she always talks about wellness, and now she's talking about finances. Well, tell us about the relationship between the two.
Okay, so wellness, the definition of wellness, it's basically the state of being well. Now, that state of being well comes consciously, because if you want to be well, you have to work at it. Now, when here you speak about mental wellness, there are different dimensions of wellness, really, and financial wellness is one of them. So there is physical wellness, there is mental wellness, there is spiritual wellness, and the state of being financially well is basically just being able to meet your obligations at the end of the month and still be able to look toward or forward to the future. So that comes in when, say, your basic needs are met. Now, that's the want versus needs. You might not be able to meet all your wants, but then you can survive because you have roof over your head, you have food to eat, and you can still look toward the future because you know that I'm saving towards the future, so I have hope. That is financial wellness. Now, when we speak of financial wellness, we can also say that it enables all the other types of wellness. And what I can say in here is, for example, physical wellness can come in. You want, we just said the new year, right? We are in a new year. This year I want to be more fit. So for you to be more physically fit and eat well, you will need money to buy food. You will need money to, if you are going to pay for the gym, you might go to like things that don't cost you money to improve your physical wellness, but money might come in there. And also, if you are broke, you can't eat, then you cannot get nutrition. So your physical wellness is affected, your mental wellness is affected because you are stressing about money. So if you are stressing about money, you can't sleep. That is mental wellness, physical wellness affected. So money is very important in wellness. It it might be overlooked, like you said, because it's not something on your body. And when it comes to wellness, money is a very important factor, and we need to talk about it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that all these wellnesses that you have explained, the spiritual wellness, the physical wellness, all that is actually interlinked. And if there is an unbalanced, then there is a problem.
Yes, because a person is a whole being. And if, say, your arm is itching or your eye is twitching the whole time, you are not going to just sit there. It's the same as if you are not physically well, you cannot work. So if you cannot work, you don't have money. If you don't have money, you are hungry, you are stressing, who's providing for your family, who's that? So all these things are interlinked. And I'm getting another example that a friend of mine I was talking to, she's an older friend, and she was telling me how she left her job to go study. And when she left her job, she didn't have money, and she found herself in a shack. She was telling me that I had my hangu meal from home, and I had my stove, my gas stove had gas. So the only thing I needed was a match to light up the stove and make soft porridge. But I didn't have that, and in my wallet I only had $10. So I went to the nearest shop. It was full. I went with that $10, and then I got my match. At the till, the lady just started taking out all this money, giving me change as if I've given her $100. Now, so she stood there, stunned, and looking at all this money that she wanted. She was conflicted because she's thinking, I'm gonna tell her that this is not my change. I gave you $10. But then at the same time, she's thinking, I don't have money to go to school on Monday. So she stood there until the lady at the till got irritated and saying, Meme, you need to move because there are people behind you. So she moved, and then she went home. She's saying that the whole time she felt so guilty because she felt, I'm stealing. But then at the same time, she's also thinking, but God, what if this is you just providing for me? So at the end of the day, where I'm coming to is, this woman needed money, and her need for money led her to acting without integrity, which led her to blaming herself, which is spiritual wellness in a way. If you are thinking, oh my God, I can't live like this, because her values were violated, because for you to feel guilty is because you think telling the truth is a good thing, right? So because she didn't tell the truth, she had suffered for some days just blaming herself for that. But then on the other hand, she was also struggling because now what am I going to do? I don't have food to eat. How do I go to school? That is lack of money that is interfering with all these other areas in her life. Yeah.
I talk so much about mental health. I would like to understand, how does a lack of financial wellness affect mental health?
For example, think about, we are now in the third year now of this COVID era where everybody is stressed, people are getting retrenched. Imagine you were used to having money, and then now you don't have that because of that. Here you are looking at your kids. Prices are going up. South Africa just announced that an increase now. So things are not going down, things are going up, and here you are, you don't have money, your kids need food, your kids need to go to school. There's all this peer pressure because your peers are going, you see them going places. We have this black tax going on. It's not a joke, and as much as we sometimes ridicule it or we say it's a burden and whatnot, there are families who definitely need to survive from black tax, because what am I supposed to do? Look at my people going hungry at home because black tax must fall, right? So now you can't help people at home, you can't help your cousins in school, you can't help your kids. Here you are, you can't get a job. So mental wellness might start just going down from there. It just started with no money, and your mental wellness is also just going down because of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You spoke about COVID, the impact that COVID left on the world.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're looking at the repo rate and all of these things that are going on. This calls for us to be more financially literate. Seeking for knowledge. How do I go about my finances? Because I believe sometimes it's not because you really don't have. Sometimes you don't know how to manage your finances. Tell us about managing finances.
Yeah. So I like to start with knowledge when I talk about managing finances, that's the first thing. It's not just about money. If you want to do something, the first thing that you need to learn first is, what is this all about? Growing up, honestly, all we know about money is that it buys you things. So a lot of people, when they get money, they buy things. And then when you can't buy anymore because the money that you got is finished, then you go get credit to buy more things. So then what happens, you find yourself in this race of just paying off debt, buying more things, because it becomes an emotional thing also. But it started from not having knowledge. So the first thing that I will tell someone to start managing their finances is start with knowledge. Learn about money. When people talk about the repo rate, what is it? What are they talking about? How does it affect your home loan and whatnot? Inflation. What is inflation? Because inflation is really what's affecting us, because inflation is going up, prices of things are going up. How does that affect you? So that's knowledge, right? The next thing about money management is budgeting. Budgeting has, I don't know why, but it has such a bitter taste. People don't like to hear about it. When you tell someone that comes to you about money, then you tell them to budget, they look at you like, what? I came asking for help, now you are telling me these things. But budgeting is not supposed to be bad. It's basically just planning. And financial wellness is a place that you define, what is it or where is it that I want to go with my finances. How you get there is through budgeting, because resources are limited. Budgeting is basically a way of you allocating your financial resources to the things that you want to do, to your goals, and to your investments, because it's through your investments that you get to what we say, it's your financial independence. Another thing is, if you have debt, you need to pay off debt. Now, there are two types of debts. Good debt is the kind of debt that buys you asset, and bad debt is the kind of debt that buys you things that depreciate. So debt that goes towards living expenses, like if you are using debt to buy food, that is not good debt, because imagine paying off something that you already finished. You don't even know what you bought.
But it's a need.
It is a need, but then you don't want to use debt to buy your needs, because your needs will come every month, are coming, and imagine if you depend on debt for that. So how do I pay off these debts? There are different kinds of debt paying off methods. You can use the different methods, but my favorite is listing your debts from the smallest to the largest. And then, because these debts, when you get debts, you have a minimum payment, right? So you pay off the minimum payment on all the debts, because you don't want to fall behind on your debts, because that will put you in trouble with the credit bureaus. So you make all the minimum payments on the debts, and any extra amounts that you have, you channel it towards the smallest debt. What that does is, it helps you eliminate the smallest debts. And when you see your debts, like I'm scratching off this one because it's a list, I'm scratching off this one, you'll be more motivated to scratch off the next one. And by that, you are just, what you are doing is you are paying the minimum payments, and then the extra you pay all of it to the smallest debts. And I don't know if we all understand interest. Debt usually comes with interest, and that depends on the rate that you are given. So another way that you can pay off your debts, you list them according to their interest rates, and you decide to pay off the one with the highest interest. Why? Because the higher the interest, that means you are paying more on that debt. So the interest is basically the cost of the debt. So if the debt is expensive, then you want to pay it off as quickly as you can. So in that case, you would want to channel your extra amount to the debt with the highest interest. So once you pay off your debt, then you will want to save for an emergency. So an emergency fund is basically a savings money that you put aside that you are going to use in case of emergencies. So emergencies now,
such as losing a job.
Yeah, they can be such as losing a job, somebody dies, because that's an emergency. Who's in our black text culture, who's going to bury them, right? Now, when we say emergencies, I can tell you that losing a job is an emergency. But when I started it was months ago, when I started saving for my emergency fund, everything was an emergency. I go to Edgar's, I saw this top, and then I'm like, oh my God, I want it. So I would say it's an emergency. Like, how am I going to go to work? The tricky part is to define what emergencies are for you. I can't tell you. It can be when you lose your job. It can be when somebody gets sick. But you need to define what's an emergency. If you don't do that, you might find yourself in a shop like I used to do. Just clothes, a piece of clothing that you find that you cannot afford to buy in that moment because you already you're spending money, and you don't have it in your budget. You might find yourself calling it an emergency and using the emergency fund because it's money that's accessible. Because you do not want to find yourself in a situation where you have an emergency, something, maybe you went into an accident or something broke on your car that cannot be paid by insurance, but you can't access your money because it's on an account that has that you need to put in notice, right?
You are talking about accessibility of that funds.
Yes, it
How
needs to be accessible.
Like after how many days? Because if I have access to it every other day,
yeah. So
that's
what you need to do in that situation, we say that it needs to be between 3 or 6 months worth of expenses. So you list your expenses, you know how much your living expenses are, how much you need in a month to live, and then you save that. When you save that though,
so it means if I live on a 15,000 every month, that's 15 times 6.
15 times 6 or 15 times 3. You decide whichever one you're comfortable with.
Okay.
So you can say, I want to have an emergency fund of 3 months, or I want to have an emergency fund of 6 months. Okay. I know people who have an emergency fund of 12 months because, especially with COVID, they were just so anxious that they decided, I'm going to just save this money so that if I lose my job, I can survive for a year while I'm looking for another job. Okay. But now you don't want to have that all that money in one account that you can access in one day. So what you can do, you can divide it up. You can have an amount that you are comfortable with in an account that is accessible. And here, money is subjective. Too much is not the same. My too much is not the same as your too much, right?
True.
But I advise, especially if you don't really have discipline, I would say 10,000 is really just enough for you to have in an account that you can access today. And then the rest can go into an account that you can access within days. Now these look like your money market accounts where the notice period is not too long, but you need to understand that the less the notice period, the less the interest rate on these accounts, because it's an investment account. It will give you interest, but then it will not be too much interest, because then the risk is not too much, because you can get your money anytime, right? So if, say, you have 12 months of an emergency fund, you can even divide it up further to say, until 6 months, I'll put it in a money market, and from then on, you will put it in an investment account that has more risk, and so more notice period, more returns, because what you don't want is to have money that's just sitting there, a lot of money that is not giving you any returns, right? So what you can do, you just set up your accounts like that.
Well, Hendrina, you mentioned earlier about black tax. Tell us about it. What is it really, and how do one manage it?
Black tax. It's a famous topic right now.